Hi, everybody. David Nour, and on behalf of the sales community, I'm joined by my co-host Randy Seidel for another Tech Sales Insights Live. Hello, Randy.
Hey, Nour, how you doing?
Great, thanks. This is a treat. We actually have somebody who hired you in a job, so I can't wait to get some of those good nuggets. Greg Scorziello is our guest in UK. Hello, Greg.
Hey, how you doing?
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Great podcast conversation this morning. For our audience, as you hear shortly, Greg's got a fantastic background, particularly around international. And Randy was over at UK for some period as well. So we want to talk a lot about both what works, what doesn't, what should you be thinking about in terms of international opportunities. So, Greg, let's start there. How about a brief intro for those that may not know as much about you?
Okay, in terms of my career and
yeah,
I mean, so
we only have an hour, so
okay, yeah, I was going to thank you.
You know, actually, before you go, let me just kind of frame it up. So we had a bunch of us knucklehead college kids, which Greg had been, I guess, a couple years before. So we're at EMC. We got hired in. Greg was running at the time we called the Inside Sales Program. Now I guess you call it SDR. So myself, Andy O'Brien, a bunch of others that people would probably know, kind of went there. So he was the first kind of sales god that we knew in terms of, all you need to do is know a little bit more, and that person's an expert. And then we had a terrific time. I got hired, I think, in May. Greg got parachuted over to the UK, I think, kind of July, August. I joined him in September, and then we were kind of partners in crime, starting off sales from Scorziello, and had lots of fantastic times. Then obviously went on to do lots of great things. So anyway, so that's my pre-intro. That's unrehearsed. So
thank you.
I'll let Greg take it from here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be reasonably quick, even though we've been doing this for about 38 years. So as Randy said, I mean, I started my career as a chartered accountant or a CPA. That didn't last very long because my roommate in college, Mike Egan, whose father had founded this crazy little company called EMC, suggested that I leave accounting and become a salesperson, which my mother thought was great, my father thought was bad, but needless to say, I joined EMC. And however, I have to say that the grounding I got out of the accounting was great, and that really set me up for really understanding business and how companies operate. And every business is trying to make money and be competitive and improve cash flow, and so that was really good. EMC was actually very interesting in that this was kind of the crazy 80s, Top Gun, failure's not an option. And so there was a very great mindset in EMC where, we're young, so we didn't know any better. And most of us were either athletes or entrepreneurs or people who paid their way through school. So, if they told us to do something, we just did it. We didn't really ask questions. And, so you really had to find a way to do it because you weren't allowed not to do it. And I think that sort of mindset really, I'm sure, Randy, you would agree, really set us apart as people when we left EMC even. And, we went to go to other companies who didn't have that mindset, and they accepted failure and they think we're unbelievable because they tell us to do something, we actually go do it. So that mindset was great. What happened early in my career is I actually went over to the UK. The way EMC operated was that they kind of had this McDonald's formula, and whether you were in Boise, Idaho, or San Francisco, or Texas, or Botswana, put a rep in a field, and he or she is going to deliver $1 million, $2 million. So I was parachuted over to the UK to go do that and start up the direct sales operation, and Randy joined me very shortly thereafter. And I think we had a competitive advantage there because, again, the Americans were more risk takers. We were more forward thinking in terms of sales. And so we just went out there and did what we were told out of Hopkinton and or Natick at the time, and we were very successful. What I learned, I think, my international career, which was one of the best parts of my career, was that fundamentally you get thrown in different markets. I was thrown in Australia, Japan, Korea, and you have no resources, you have very little support from corporate, and you just have to make things happen. So you have to be very creative. You got to find ways to leverage relationships locally, thought leaders, try to do some creative deals to make things happen. And so that really, again, because failure is not an option, right? So you can't say to Dick Egan, hey, I didn't make my number because I didn't have this, this, and this. It's like, no, go figure it out.
So let me ask you, let's take a step back. How did the UK, they were just told you, Greg, we need you over there. How did that job come about? And what did you think through, or did you, of taking that leap? Because again, for most of us, if you're homegrown, I'd rather stick around here in my own backyard. I know my way around. I know, how to navigate kind of my hometown, but across the pond, particularly if you haven't spent much time there early on, had to be an obstacle.
Well, I think, remember that initially EMC hired everyone from BC, UMass, Northeastern, and Babson College, right? I mean, it was, and so if you wanted to expand internationally, you had to move the people out, right? Later, when we did the Top Gun program, we went out to all the universities and we hired all these captains of football teams, and I call them mini Randys, and we brought them back in. We then put them back in their hometowns, right? So that they wouldn't feel, so they had the relationships and they knew people. So no, you didn't even think about it. You're like, hey, great, good opportunity. Let's go do it. And I think that was great because you just any opportunity they threw at you, you took it and you just, grabbed the reins and went for it.
And so, Randy, same question of you. How did the UK opportunity come up for you, and what did you think through, and what did you walk into when you landed?
Yes, I remember vividly, I was walking through the engineering lab at EMC, which wasn't that big. And I thought I was going to go to Denver for sales rep. And then Roger Marino at the time, who was kind of running sales, said, I said, Roger, when am I going to find out? He's like, oh, you're going to London and, go hang out with Greg and figure it out. So then you basically just parachute over and you figure it out, and you go from there.
Okay, so I
think David, just quickly on that, I think what's interesting about no matter where I've traveled anywhere in the world, everyone has the same challenges, no matter where you are. So if you're running a business, your challenges are the same. You got to make money. You got to be more competitive. You got to be more efficient. All those challenges pretty much are the same. The only thing that's different is one, language. That's a challenge. So some people speak the language or not, and just really how you deal with people, right? So if you're in Japan, you deal with people a lot differently than if you deal with them in Spain. But that's the only thing. And I think why EMC liked putting their guys from the States internationally is because there's no excuses, right? If you hire someone locally at the time, they would say, hey, in my country, it's different. I can't do this because in my country, it's different. And the answer is, it's not different. The same issues and challenges occur. You might have to have a glass of ouzo and a cappuccino and maybe whatever when you're having the discussions, but the fundamentals of business apply everywhere.
So I want to talk about that experience for a second, because I think it's really important, particularly as more tech companies realize that global expansion is going to enhance their market value. Greg, how did you prioritize? And then I'm going to go to Seidel next. When you go into a new market, is there a checklist, or kind of what do you think through of where do I start? Because there's a lot you can do. I need the basic infrastructure. I need to figure out who am I going to go call on. How do you start? If you're in a new country, where's the starting point?
Well, I think there's two things. You have a lot of companies out there today raising lots of money, lots of venture funding, and they want to be the gorilla in the space, and they want to go out there and they want to have representation in UK, France, Germany, all these countries. And the reality is that is not the best strategy. You pick a market where you have the right people, you crack the code, And once you crack the code and you get the references, then you move to the next market. Because at the end of the day, it's about driving customers and revenue, and it's not about putting pins on the map. So the first thing to answer your question is you really have to have some discipline about not trying to expand too fast and get successful in one or two countries. Because what happens is you'll have 10 countries where no one's successful.
Yeah.
Right. I'd rather have 2 countries where I have everyone successful and then move to the next. The next thing you do is you kind of apply, where is our sweet spot? What are some of the basic stuffs is, okay, when we sell our technology in the US, who do we sell it to? What's the sweet spot for the technology? What is it, industry focused? Is it application focused? So of course I'm going to go apply that same strategy in that country that I operate in, right? And then I'm going to look in that and I'm going to say, hey, are there any people, partners that may also be in that sector that I might want to try to meet with and leverage because they have relationships and family and friends, et cetera. Are there any thought leaders that in the territory that all the customers talk to? The obvious thing is if we have lots of customers in the US, do they have a subsidiary in that country that we can go speak to and try to get a reference? So really what you're trying to do is get critical mass of clients. And I usually say, no matter where I go, once I have 5, I'm going to start scaling fast. Once I get those 5 references, I'm going to scale fast. So what is the US business telling me where the sweet spot is, the sectors, the value prop? I'm going to talk to people hey, do you know anyone over, in the US? Do you know anyone in England, right? And it's a classic reference, talking to people and having a lot of confidence. I mean, I think, Randy, you'll agree that we were pretty arrogant, when we were starting up. And so we believed we had a good thing. And you know what? We're going to do you as much of a favor as you're going to do us.
So,
right?
Seidel, we're going to go through a lot of good questions in this session. So how long were you in the UK? And after that, you went to Australia. And I'm after, what do you believe were some of the biggest mistakes you made, Seidel, in hitting the ground running and kind of getting traction?
Yep. So I remember one of the mistakes, Greg and I originally worked for John McAllister, who was running Europe at the time. And again, I don't know anything about anything. So I would drive 3-4 hours, one way for a call, then, 2 hours for another one. And, it was, driving kind of all over the country. And then what he did is he came in, he drew this map that Greg and I had for, writing everything out on with a marker. And he drew a circle around the city of London. He said, if you just focus here, you can be busy all year long and you don't have to worry about going everywhere else. So, the point of stories, which is, obvious now, but is really, hey, where can you be the most productive? Where can you have the best bang for the buck? And in, pre-Zoom days, it's, kind of how can you do the most number of sales calls where? And, that was something that really struck with me.
How long were you in UK?
A year and a half.
And then you went to Australia.
Yes.
Were those 2 markets materially different?
It was, I'd say a little bit. Australia was a little bit more leading edge at the time. They would be kind of a beta test for a lot of new technology companies. So I think at the time, England was certainly, by definition, is a lot more conservative. So you'd have to find at the time for us at EMC, it was kind of a similar product, but costs less. So there's a certain demographic of people who that would appeal to, much more so than some of the, traditional Britons who would say, I don't want to get, fired for not buying from, IBM or whoever. And then in Australia, I'd say they were probably, a lot more open. The market wasn't as big, but people, I think, were a lot more open for, being risk takers.
So, Greg, you talked about, a couple of the challenges that a lot of these companies that are, maybe startups that are raising a lot of capital make and trying to put pins on a map. Talk about some of the other, maybe obvious to you, but not so obvious to the rest of us, mistakes or missteps you see tech companies make when they do come to Europe or EMEA?
Well, I think, the first thing, this is a people business, right? You got to hire good people, right? And if you're trying to hire too fast, you're not going to get the best people, and so there's going to be a huge amount of churn. And you see this a lot where, the sales guys get brought on, they pay over the odds for them. They tell them it's going to be the cure for cancer. 6 months, they're gone. So I think the first mistake they do in their effort to hire so many people, they hire a lot of bad people, right? And they pay those bad people a lot of money, right? I think, another issue really is, they've spent a lot of money on marketing. They're getting a lot of interest. But, in terms of converting that into business, isn't always, they're not very successful in that. And that's because, again, maybe their proposition is too technology focused versus, business impact focused, business outcome focused. So I just see a lot of the big boys coming over here and hiring lots of people, and then firing lots of people, then hiring lots of people, then firing lots of people. And it's really because they're trying to do too much, too fast, because the VCs are telling them, I've just given you 400 million, go spend it. And that doesn't always work. Less is more, and you got to take risks. The less you do, and you said that, Randy, about, there was a saying, so I come to England and I have all of the UK and my goal's 1 million. And then Randy comes to the UK and I have half the UK and my goal's 2 million. And then we bring some other people on and I get London and my goal's 4 million, right? And as this goes on, I end up getting one account and my goal is 10 million. What that means is the more you focus, the more business you do, right? It's a risk, it's potentially a high risk strategy, but so I think you got to be focused. Don't do too much. Get some really good key people, and then work to crack the code in one country first before you go to the next.
Yeah.
So I appreciate Eric and Mike and company jumping in with their comments. Would love more of the audience to jump in also with your questions of Greg or Randy. Randy, are there some attributes you look for in early conversations with the sales rep stateside that you believe will really help? It's a good indicator of they're going to succeed regardless of what international market you drop them into.
Yeah, I think I always have to watch what I say, but I think you can't be the ugly American, I guess, if that means a lot, right? I mean, I think you have to be kind of very humble, open, flexible, good listener, not obnoxious. And be a learner, for sure. And those are some basic attributes. And I think you have times where you think you have it, and some people just are fish out of water and can't deal, and others are flexible and can adapt. And I'm just going to put some words around. So Mike Sheehy is a very seasoned senior sales leader at ServiceNow. Great guy. We had Kevin Haverty on, I don't know, probably a month or two ago. Mike, I think, is still based down in Atlanta. And Eric Scollard had a great run running sales at a bunch of companies. I'm not sure exactly where he is now, so sorry, Eric. You can feel free to say it. But all of us had the benefit of Greg, and I love Mike's comment. With Greg, the Tom Cruise of the EMC Top Gun program. So it's probably about the best compliment as you can get.
Yep. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about a second. So Greg, in our podcast conversation, I took some great notes around this Top Gun University. What was the vision? What worked exceptionally well? What didn't work that you would do differently today?
So, and this really wasn't my vision. I just was kind of executing on the vision. But the vision was that we wanted to build, think of it as a special forces for sales in the industry. And so to do that, we needed the very, very hungry, very competitive people. And when we looked at who those could be people. If you look at someone like Randy was, putting himself through university. He had, doing a lot of these organizations in the school. People who were kind of leaders. They hated to fail, right? So their whole thing was about being successful. The mindset of being, I want to win. I'm prepared to do what it takes to win. I'm prepared to do the hard work, the discipline, and to do it. And so what we did is we went around we didn't go to the Ivy League schools. We went to the USCs, the University of Texas, and just found those people, right? And so once we found those people, then we could mold them. We're now the sergeants trying to put these people through boot camp. We're preparing them for war, and so therefore we're really working them. Not only, hey, here are the steps you need to take to be successful, but here's the mindset you need to be successful. And so that was and I think it worked well, because at the time we had old geezers like, Randy, me, and you, who were out there that they could support initially. And then it kind of flipped, where the young people were now in charge of the older people. And then, so I think, the ability to get really smart, hungry, competitive people and then mold them is such an incredibly beneficial way to build a successful organization.
Was there one or two things that didn't work as well?
I would say no. I mean, I think, it was a fairly simple life back then. I mean, you could pick up the phone and call people. They could hang up on you. I mean, it was, we didn't have voicemail and email and all the stuff. It was a pretty simple life, back then. So yeah, you had to take a lot of rejection, but you could actually get and talk to people and do stuff. So I don't think so.
Randy,
Yeah. Well,
I was going to ask you.
I was going to chime in on that. Yeah. So I think where we did have some feelings, we would hire some of these experienced folks. In the time, I think I remember from, Memorex, and they would kind of, as Greg alluded to before, they'd kind of end up spending more time telling us how this wouldn't work or that wouldn't work. And we're more worried about, we don't care why not. We don't care why. Let's go do and, let's go execute.
So it sounds like, EMC's culture is legendary of just, hustling, focused, driven, tenacious, reps that I think you brought in the right DNA and molded them that way. Randy, why don't we see more of that Top Gun school? Or do you see examples of companies doing that like EMC did 20, 30 years ago?
Yeah, I think there's variations on the theme. I mean, off the top of my head, I know HP, Dell, Oracle all have kind of different hubs around the country where they kind of, have that. I think given some of the, pressures, I mean, we're almost, it's almost like what you see now on, kind of Goldman Sachs, 18, 20-hour days. In tech sales today, I think that's a hard environment to cultivate, because that's, kind of not appropriate, not really allowed. So I think some of that, pressure kind of, sifts through a bunch of folks. And there's, smaller companies. I know At Scale, Peter McKay at Sneak, Security Scorecard. I mean, they all have, versions of that. And I think it's proven to be best practice. And lastly, another good benefit from it is it's low cost labor, right? So you're getting somebody in their 20s out of college, you pay them a lot less, as well
to learn and kind of grow through the system. So Greg, let's talk about the business case focus. Obviously, the title of the podcast, I really appreciated your lens. Talk about, the different sales reps or teams or organizations that heavily rely on their speeds and feeds. And let me tell you how great we are versus the business case that you alluded to.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if we start from the top and we say that, if you want to be, your top leader, in any profession, architecture, doctors, salespeople, you could have 10 to 20%, they're going to be really good. 50% they're going to be okay, and the rest are going to be pretty crap, right? And the difference between that is that it's a state of mind. Do I want to be successful? Do I believe I can be successful? What do I have to do? Am I disciplined? Can I work hard? And it's all about building your craft, honing your craft, and being successful. I think with respect to business cases, because I'm not a really technology person, I never have been. I've been in technology my whole life, but I'm not a technology person, and I'm really a business person. So whenever I take on a new technology or a company, what I'm trying to understand is how did that technology impact the business from a operational point of view, from a profitability point of view, from a competitive point of view. How does it impact, and how can I quantify that value in hard currency terms? And so when you're trying to, if you can build proposals around business cases versus just building proposals around, this is what we're going to sell you, and here are the features, and here's how much it's going to cost, then what that's going to do is a couple of things. One, it's going to drive pricing based on the business case. So, one of the things that I do is I never look at the price book, because the price book is irrelevant until I understand what impact I can have on the business and have quantified that business. It's irrelevant. I could be with a company and not even know it, because I don't care. What I care about is how do I deliver as much value to that business? And every business has the same things. If it's in IT, they want to reduce costs. They want to reduce risk. They want to improve application time to market. They want to improve quality of service. Every CIO has the same objectives. So what I need to understand is how what I do delivers on those, and how do I quantify that? And if I can do that, then I'm going to do bigger deals, and I'm not going to be measured against my competitors. I'm not going to get into a price discussion. Yeah. And so I think from a business case, what I always say to people is, if you can understand how your product moves the needle in a business in terms of revenue, profitability, competitiveness, if you can quantify that, then you can have a call with the CIOs and the CTOs and the business leaders. And you know what? They are the nicest people in the world, right? So those people, if you talk their language, all they want you to do is help them fix their problems. And if you say, hey, what are you trying to do in the next 12 to 18 months? What are your top 3 priorities? We know they're going to be one of the 5 or 6 that we already know, right? And so the point is understand that, start at the top, understand what they're trying to do. How do we move the needle, create a business case? And what's going to happen is your deal's going to get bigger, your competition's going to go down, and you're going to make a lot more money.
So, Randy, let's talk about that a second, because a lot of tech companies obviously are very proud of their technology, and you and I have met. We've led sales teams that are just hell bent on that feature function. Let me tell you how great our tech is. What Greg is talking about makes a ton of sense. You got to translate that to the business outcomes. I've always believed not every technology sales rep can make that leap and can have that intelligent business outcome conversation. What have you seen, and what do you think is the answer?
Yeah, so just to boil it down, one of my party lines is, if you're in the elevator with the CFO for 30 seconds, what are you going to talk about? And it's not 50 slides of techno mumbo jumbo. It's all about, which Greg said, how you can help generate revenue, how are you going to help them save money, how do you give them a competitive advantage? In the case of compliance, how do you keep them out of jail? So, that's I guess, gets nurtured during a training process. And again, Greg and I think are wired similarly. We're not, technical people, so we had no choice. So it was kind of survival. You had to figure that out. But certainly the best folks are probably ones that are not like us, but that are technical and can do the technical side and can do that business side.
Greg, in our conversation, you mentioned that your CPA background helped you see the bigger picture, really help you drive more of that business conversation with leaders. Talk more about that and that diverse background really enabling your revenue success, revenue generation success.
Yeah, so I think as Randy said, any sales leader needs to understand how what we do impacts what they do in terms of profit, competitiveness, growth, efficiency, blah, 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 right? One of the things that's really important is if you're trying to, and I'll give you an example. We were working on a deal. This is with a company called Actifio, and their average deal value was something like, let's say 500,000. And so one of the sales reps I was working with, we said, hey, let's do a 20 million pound deal. And so they said, well, let's just back into it. So what we did is we went to the leadership and we said, tell us how you make investment decisions, right? Is it on investment rate of return? Is it on ROI? Is it time to cash flow? How do you make decisions? What are the investment hurdles? And if we can meet those investment hurdles, what gets signed off?
Yeah.
And so what happens is you build the business case not to kill the investment hurdles because then no one believes it. You build the business case to just meet the investment hurdles. And so we're now sitting down, this is Barclays, we're sitting down with the CIO of Barclays, and we had just met the buyer, and he says, hey, how much is this thing costing? And we said, it's 17.9 million pounds. And he said, really? I said, yeah, but the IRR is X, the ROI is Y, and my understanding is that these are your sign-off metrics. He said, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And the numbers are irrelevant, whether they're 20 pounds or 50 million pounds. The numbers are relevant. It's about how they make investment decisions. So that I think was really important. And I've interviewed, and I know, Randy, you've done a lot more than me, but I've probably met with maybe 300-400 CIOs. And they're when I was young, oh God, I'm going to go meet a CIO. I can't call the CIO. They're the nicest people. They don't care about they're not religious about technology. Hey, my technology is blue. I want red. The technical people are religious about the technology. The senior execs just have to deliver outcome. And if you can help them do that, they love you.
Randy, Greg said earlier that obviously times have changed. The selling environment has become more complicated. You and I talked about RevOps is a thing now. And so how does that business selling to that business leader or even a technical leader needs to evolve in the post-pandemic world? So as we all get vaccinated, as we get on the market, what do you believe sales reps and sales managers and sales leaders need to think about or do differently to engage that buyer in that business conversation?
I think it's, I don't know if it's anything different, pre-COVID, during COVID, or post-COVID. I think it's, qualifying to see, what their needs are, and then, qualifying around those, business issues that, Greg and I have both mentioned, such that you can come back to them with the value prop that makes the difference and makes sense. And, within the sales process, you're going to drift down to the, kind of lower levels in the company where, they may have their blinders on, and, there's some religious battles over, well, it's not this technology or that technology, whatever. And then if you can start off high, that's something that's of huge value. And, Greg, I'm sure you agree. I just was thinking, so if you're a technology company looking to launch in UK or EMEA, and, you can find somebody like you who can kind of leverage the top down approach, that probably helps. You may have to, pay a lot or pay something for it, but their kind of time to market would be dramatically improved, as opposed to some seller who can't get to the high level because they don't have the relationship. They start in a low level. They're almost going to be trapped, right?
Yeah, I think it's getting. So when I say the senior execs, you got to get to the. So you may have a technology, Randy, that isn't. It's not going to move the needle at the senior exec. However, it might move the needle at the business unit manager who has the budget and the requirements. So what you have to do is, and I think I'm old school like you, Randy. Everyone every year comes up with like a new terminology, personas. We used to call those, those are the target people. But, if the person who has the budget and the decision maker, that's the senior exec, and getting to that person and understanding what they're trying to do and how we can help them deliver that better, faster, cheaper, then that's the thing. So I think you work with the technology company. Where's your sweet spot? Who's the people that care? Who's got the money and buy? Let's get to those people with that message. And I think you're going to learn a lot very fast when you do it that way, and not waste a lot of cycles with people talking to the people who aren't the decision maker, saying lots of nice things and going out to nice lunches. So that's not as much now. So absolutely, Randy, totally agree with you.
So Randy, we've got a question from Eric.
All right, Eric. Where would you place your first teams in EMEA? In the past, I always started in the UK, but with Brexit, I'm thinking Germany. What do you think, Greg? Great question, Eric.
So Eric, good question. I would still say UK. And so, again, this is the whole thing. There's a lot of money in the UK, right? You're not going to saturate that market. Germany, culturally, Germany is spread out. It's a lot of, London is London, right? It's a big metropolis. You can get in there. There's a lot of money. You can be successful. Germany is not as entrepreneurial. You have to go to 5 different cities. You got Frankfurt and Dusseldorf and Hamburg and Munich and and Stuttgart. So I think if you're still trying to get a spear into the market as an American company, you're probably better off starting in the UK. There's other areas, you could go to the Benelux, or you could go to Nordics, which are pretty technology savvy. But if you make a mistake in France or Germany, it costs you a lot of money. When you want, the UK is very similar to the US, very ruthless. Someone's not working, you crack their kneecaps and you check them out, right?
For our audience, we're not condoning physical violence.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
The Italian Scorziello, don't mess with us. But I would still enter the UK first, personally.
Randy, you see a lot of early stage companies. You advise a lot of them. You invest in a few. How about you? What you still like UK as a first kind of beach entry into EMEA?
Yes, and if nothing else, the language barrier as well.
Yeah. So we got our next question from Tucker.
All right, Tucker, thanks. Any advice to SDRs looking to grow their careers, who spend more time talking about the technology and lower level managers and don't have that business level focused conversations with execs?
Who's answering that?
You are.
Oh, thank you. So great question. Being an SDR now is a lot more challenging than it was many years ago. I think if you're like a company, if you're working for a company that, like a Docker or one of these companies that spend hundreds of millions in marketing, big sledgehammer to crack a nut, you'll probably have a lot of internal questions coming in. People want to learn about it. It's the hot technology. And so SDRs tend to work okay. And most of the people calling in are technical. And you got to try to find out how you move up the food chain. So I'm finding that the SDR practice, I don't know about you, Randy. I'm finding, at least internationally, it's not giving a good return on investment because one, if you want to call the person, you have to use like these applications like Lusher that give you their phone numbers, and then you call their phone numbers and they're like, why are you calling my phone number? It's, and then, so, what we're finding, or what I found in the UK, what we're trying to do to help the SDRs is to build an account-based marketing strategy using machine learning, AI, and where those things go out and they look at people who are looking at the type of things that we want them to look at, and trying to create a buying intent for those things, and then giving those to the SDRs to kind of grab onto. So I think, and this is new to me, right? So this is one of the things that I love about doing what I do is I learn new ways of working. I learn. So when Randy and I were doing Top Gun and we were picking up a phone and calling people and they were hanging up on us, at least we talked to people, right? Now it's real. You can use LinkedIn. The BDRs will go on to LinkedIn. They'll try to link into the person. They'll try to use all these different applications to get in, and they struggle. It's really a big struggle. So I think my feeling is, one, companies need to start to get into the 21st century around applications that will help be a little bit more intelligent around how we target clients. Again, these demand, trying to think of some of the companies, Trillo or Demand Base, or
Six Sense. I don't know if you use 6 Sense. That's big in the whole ABM space.
What's that?
6 Sense. They do a lot in the account.
That's right. We got to do something a little bit different. I mean, I don't know, Randy, what you think, but do you think having a bunch of BDRs picking up a phone, trying to, maybe in the US it's easier, but it's really, 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 really difficult internationally?
Yeah. Well, it's a lot longer discussion. I think if I think there's still, generally speaking, a marketing problem where marketing's not providing right leads, good leads enough, all that. But at the point that whatever leads there are, ideally they're, SDRs are calling on leads. So there's people that have, something of an interest, which makes it, I guess, a little bit easier.
So Greg, let's talk about talent. Talent, that's just in the UK and then more broadly EMEA. Is the talent readily available? What have you found to be a good, consistent source of talent? Has Brexit impacted the available talent? Talk a little about sales talent. And, I can parachute some Americans over there, but at some point, ideally, I'm building a local team.
Okay, so I'll take a high-level answer and then a low-level answer. A high-level answer is obviously sales in the United States, North America, is listen, there's still the 80-20 rule, right? Applies in America. 20% are great, and the rest, it depends. It moves down the scale, right? That doesn't matter, right? That's what it is. I think in Europe, we don't have the breadth and depth of people that the U.S. has, because sales hasn't always been treated as a really professional. It's like, oh, you're going to be a salesperson. But we do have some good talent. The problem that we're all having is it's very scarce. And so therefore you're competing with a lot of people, right, to get that talent. I would say there's probably more in the UK, maybe more in the Benelux and Nordics, and maybe less in some of the Latin countries in terms of talent. But, part of it is going back and trying to be more creative. Don't go, everyone's going, it's really crazy. I mean, because you have all these VCs that are spending all this money, everyone's going after the same people, paying them too much money, and they're not successful. And so therefore, I think we get back, David, to the question is, should we be doing something different? Right? Should we make some investments, find some really good, talented people, because they exist in all the countries, and really build them up, and maybe use partners and alliances and other stuff in the interim to kind of generate. So I'm a very big fan of partners and alliances, but with partners and alliances, we have to be material to their business. We have to deliver, incremental revenue. We have to be important. And Randy, you remember this in the early days. If we couldn't, it's not, hey, I got 1,000 salespeople. I don't want 1,000. I want 2. I want 2 of your best people, right? Give me your 2. I created a partner program called Special Forces, where I went to all the partners. I said, I don't want any of your sales. I just want 2 of your best salespeople, right? We'll train them as if they work for us, and we'll make them successful. We'll make us all successful.
So I want to come back to that partner alliance, but Randy, we've got a question from Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Another big question is for U.S. tech startups. When's the right time to invest in EMEA expansion? So, one of my quick thoughts is, I think sometimes people want to expand geographically, too broadly, too fast. And I think first you have to make sure you have product market fit, your use case. And, if you're based in Charlotte, I'd say, hey, focus in that Mid-Atlantic area. If you're Boston, do New England, Bay Area, kind of there. So that way you can have engineers, product marketing, again, in the days when it was more face-to-face, to be able to kind of, walk and see, now with Zoom, it makes, I guess, a little bit easier, but kind of, I'd say, tightly, but then the point that that you have something that is going to work, that can go and grow, then that's the right time to do it. Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's real. I hate to get back this McDonald's formula, but I think if you've cracked the code in the US and you have a high percentage of your sales organization meeting or exceeding quota, then I think you should go, right? If you're in the US and 20% of the revenue is coming from 80% of the revenue is coming from 20% of the people who just are really top people and no one else is really doing it. I see that in a lot of startups. I mean, I see, when you look at who's making their numbers. So I think if you can get to that point where, let's say 40 or 50% are really delivering, then I would say, let's go, because we can make that work internationally if you've cracked the code in the US. Absolutely, 100%. But if it's only 2 or 3, 10 people doing it out of 100, I'd say no.
You have work to do in your own backyard. So, Greg, let's talk about channels. You brought up channels and alliances. How are they similar in, say, UK or EMEA than US? How are they different? When does channel alliance make sense for a tech company to kind of create that force multiplier that Randy talked about?
So I treat channels like salespeople, right? Maybe this is controversial, Randy. I'm sorry, but 80% of channels are crap, right? That's the first assumption, right? And so you got to find the best ones first, right? So don't just assume a channel is going to be good, because it's like when you recruit a channel, it's like you're recruiting a salesperson. Is this channel, are we additive? Are they good? Do they have the right mindset? How do they think? So channels, however, if you find those, they can add a tremendous value to your business, a tremendous multiplier. So you need to find ones where we are material to their business, right? We can generate every partner wants to not only grow profitability because they get paid on margin, but they want annuity stream revenue because they don't want to wake up on January 1st and have to make all their number. They want to pay all their bills. So if you can show a partner how we can generate annuity stream revenue and, build margin, and we can commit to them, then they're really good. right? And that's the same as the US and all the other places.
So Randy, does that channel partner in UK need to see that I've gained traction in UK on my own before they might be interested in me? How do I, as a small tech startup, how do I get the attention of those 2-3 great channel partners that Greg's talking about?
Yeah, I mean, you know, number one, you have to do it if you were and there are some great tech companies that have grown out of the UK, but yeah, there is a perspective on for sure the local country, and I'm just looking at Javad Matin, who back in whatever it was 85 to 87 when I was there, they were a partner of ours at Mega Leasing, and then Greg, I guess you hired him down in Australia, was that right?
Yep.
Yes, that's hilarious. But yeah, I mean, proving it out in the local market is definitely something that's important.
Mm.
You know, so partners, just summarize on that. It's a numbers game. You got to get to the CEOs of those partners. You got to find out what they're trying to do. You got to understand what their goals and objectives are. You got to find out who their best people are. What you want to try to do is you don't want to disrupt their business, because they have who in your business can I align to this project and focus on them. Keep all your 20 other people, 100 other people doing what they do. And then once they're successful and they're making money, everyone jumps in.
So Greg, let's build on that. Trends that you've observed in the last 13 months of this pandemic that you believe will continue to have impact on tech sales in EMEA.
Okay, so good and bad. I mean, Randy, you probably know this, right? The first 20 years of my marriage and life, I was away 7 months to 8 months a year on a plane in another country trying to sell stuff. And the reality was that I spent 10% of my time in front of the customer. And of that 10%, many of those customers were not the right customers, or they weren't doing, it was a waste of time, right? I saw the world. It was a great, we had a great time. We drank a lot. We had a good, it was fun, right? But I think one of the benefits, of this kind of remote working is, I don't have to take a flight down and change in Nigeria and go to South Africa for a presentation where 2 people show up and there was supposed to be 100, right? So it is definitely a huge time recoup for salespeople. However, close personal contact is no substitute when you want to build a long-term relationship. But then you can choose that because you've had the time to, this is a waste of time. Hey, this is a real opportunity, right? And so I think actually, I wish I had this like 25 years ago, right? So sorry, Randy?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, all the wasted, you driving up 3 hours to the north of England and the person telling you, I'm never going to buy your stuff no matter what you do. Right? If that was on Zoom, right? No problem, right? So I think that is really helpful. I think the negative is people are just on so many meetings. They've kind of gone into a meeting frenzy. And there's a lot of wasted meetings. I'm not a meeting person, right? So I will someone has an hour meeting, I'm like done in 15 minutes, right? Like get the job, So the pandemic has, in the UK and in Europe, there's been positive parts where we're being much more productive because we're not having to travel. There's negative parts because once you find that company that you want to do business with, there's no substitute for face-to-face business. And we're doing that. We're starting to now that we're opening up, we're having those meetings.
Randy Seidel, how old were you when you went to UK?
22.
I was going to say 55, but
Top advice Randy of today would give that 22-year-old on the flight to UK, what would you tell him to think about, do differently
Let's see here. That's a great question. I think just, kind of, focus is, Greg's, I think, theme of kind of what he just was talking about, just, kind of productivity, right? So what's the best use of time for, if you're in sales, revenue generating activities. So, what's the, what's the best bang for the buck? And it's, definitely not a lot of internal mumbo jumbo. It's, for lack of better words, it's, sales calls. So whether it's Zoom or whatever else.
Greg, I'm going to ask you the same question. It's been a while for you since you went over, but what advice would you give Greg, who was headed that way?
I mean, I would, from a productivity standpoint, they have to use Zoom. I would say, use remote working for your first call. But if there's an opportunity, then try to schedule a face-to-face. That's one. The second thing is, I would say, there's just a lot of bad people out there not doing the right stuff, right? They're not disciplined. They're not hardworking. Just because a person has made their quota or exceeded their quota for the last 3 years doesn't mean they're really good. It just means that maybe they work for a hot company and a hot product, and that's what I find. That's why I have one of the worst. I've hired like 300-400 people, and I have one of the worst track records in hiring people, because you can get this false sense of someone's abilities through, hey, I did my numbers. So I think really it is, guys, if you're going to sell, this is going back, Randy, to our early days, right? Ask lots of questions, trying to understand how what we do can help what they do. What are their 3 to 5 priorities? Let people lie. So don't always believe what people tell you, right? Because even senior executives lie. Ask lots of questions. Try to find out how we can help them. And it's qualify. And you know what? The more you can find out about their problems, and the more problems you can solve, the more that they will come to you and ask for the order. And this is like sales 101. But you know what? A lot of people in England and Europe was like, oh, sales. I'm like, it's not about sales. It's about solving problems, right? And if you solve the problems, they'll buy.
On that note, for our audience, if you've joined us late, you've been listening to Greg Scorziello in London, UK. Actually hired, we still are questioning that judgment, but hired Randy Seidel to go over there and build out UK for the EMC group. Randy, any final thoughts before I talk about next week?
No, I just, Greg, thanks so much. Been a long time. And, for those that are looking to expand in EMEA, Greg's a fantastic resource. I think pretty willing and available. And for those that are watching that are members of Sales Community, thanks. For those that are not yet, please check it out. We have what I call a no-brainer 30-day free trial, and lots of great content. Our theme is, kind of learn more so you can sell more. And Nour, as always, thanks so much for orchestrating this.
My pleasure. Glad to be with you guys. For our audience, you're not going to believe this. I'm the host I'm both the host and the guest next week. So we're going to talk about curve benders.
Can I ask you questions? Can I ask you questions then?
Of course.
All right. You're in trouble, mate.
So for again, next week, same time, noon Eastern, we're going to talk about curve benders. Come join us for the podcast in the morning. Come join us for LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube Live. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having me. Take care,
of course. Take care.